Hello, everybody. We are back with you again, and we've focused on agriculture, but something a lot of us don't think about when we think of the different kinds of farms we have around us are the egg farms we have. And Iowa actually produces more eggs every year than any other state in the United States. Each year, Iowa produces almost 16 billion eggs. So we're going to do two things today. I'm going to start by reading you a book about an Iowa egg farm. And that book was written by the author Katie Olthoff, but she wrote that after she visited an egg farm. And the student who is narrating that book, who's giving you his perspective, is a student in Iowa. So I think that's the best part of those books. When we're done reading that book, we're going to talk about the different parts of our eggs because you're familiar with the white and the yolk or the yellow, but there's many more parts to an egg than just those two that you think of. So after we learn a little bit about how these are produced in Iowa, then we're going to take a look at two different eggs. I will crack open this fresh one and we can look inside, but I also have an egg that's floating in vinegar. And it's been in this vinegar for almost a week, and the shell is gone. The vinegar helps dissolve that shell, and then we can look inside a little closer at some of those parts. So sit back, enjoy this book, and then when I'm back with you, we're going to talk about all the parts of those eggs. My Family's Egg Farm by Katie Olthoff. Hi, my name is Cole, and this is my family farm. We raise corn, soybeans, pigs, and chickens. Our chickens lay eggs that we collect and sell. There are different types of chickens and different types of chicken farms. Some chickens are raised for their meat. They are called broilers. Some chickens are raised for their eggs. They are called layers. Our chickens are layers. Our chickens are all white and lay eggs with white shells. Brown chickens will lay eggs with brown shells. Our chickens live inside these barns. Living indoors protects the chickens from bad weather and predators like foxes. The barns also keep the birds healthy from disease. There are about 165,000 chickens on our farm. Some egg farms are much smaller than ours. Some are much bigger. The chickens come to our farm when they are about 4 months old. These are called pullets. They start laying eggs within a couple weeks after they arrive. Chickens lay eggs every day for over a year. Then they take a break for about 6 weeks. During that time, their bodies rest and they build up strength. Then they begin laying eggs again. Our chickens live in groups of 3 or 4 or more. The groups stay together in cages. Inside the cages, there are water spigots for them to drink from. Our chickens eat feed made from corn and soybeans. 4 times a day, fresh feed is automatically brought to the chickens. Computers control the equipment in our barns. Lights and fans keep the chickens comfortable. We check on the chickens at least twice a day. We make sure the equipment is working correctly, and we make sure the chickens are healthy. The floors of the cages are made out of wire. The waste from the chickens drops through the wire onto a conveyor belt below. Every hour, the conveyor belt is cleaned. This helps keep the cages, the birds, and the eggs clean. Each chicken lays about 1 egg per day. The cages are tilted so the eggs roll to their own conveyor belt. Then the eggs are sorted and weighed. Some farmers check the quality of the egg by holding it up to a bright light and looking inside. We load our eggs on trucks and sell them to a food company. The eggs go to a plant where they are cracked. Then they are used in recipes and foods like pancake mix. Many eggs are sold in grocery stores for people to eat. Eggs can be eaten hard-boiled, cooked, scrambled, or fried. My family and I eat a lot of eggs. They are a good source of protein. I need protein to grow strong if I want to become a wrestler, a police officer, or a farmer. Okay, so now that we've talked about that egg production, we're going to focus on what we would find inside our egg. And we're going to start from the outside in, and we're going to look at each part. You're already familiar with the yolk, the yellow part, and the white that we don't see in this picture. Those are the parts you notice when you eat. But there's other things that make up our egg. So I've started with two different eggs here. Okay, if we look at our fresh egg, it has this hard shell on the outside that you are familiar with. That's what you crack if you're cooking. But that shell is there to protect, whether there's a chick inside or not. This is going to keep out harmful bacteria and really just keep that egg holding tight. Okay. Now, I told you that I took the shell off of one of my eggs. So what we're left with when the shell dissolves is this really squishy egg. And under that shell, there's this soft membrane. And if you look at these two eggs, they are from the same carton, but you can see that when it's soaked in vinegar, it absorbed or it soaked up some of that vinegar and it actually got bigger. Okay, but these are from the same carton in my refrigerator, nothing fancy. So when we take off that shell, underneath we can see this membrane, and it would be pretty hard to break. If I had a fork or a knife, I could poke it, but just squeezing it, not much is happening. Okay, that membrane keeps out harmful bacteria. Okay, so it does have a purpose, especially if there's a chick inside. We have to keep bacteria out so it's healthy. So as we look at our diagram, you know that the outside has our shell. Right under that is the membrane that we don't always see. But next, we're going to crack open our egg so that we can look at the different parts inside. We're going to study it a little more.
Now, we should mention these eggs that are going to be human consumption, they're not fertilized.
No, right.
They're in a barn with all hens. So they don't have a baby. They don't have a chick growing in them.
But they do check that before they sell them to grocery stores. It's a process called candling. They used to use a candle, but now we use a light like a flashlight, and they hold these up, and then you can see through that shell just to make sure. We wouldn't want to sell one that accidentally had a chick in it. Okay. No. So I'm going to crack this just into a plastic container here without making too big of a mess. Okay. Now, I want to come to this shell here. At the big end of our shell, you can kind of see in mine a little bit. There's this air pocket at the top. That's called an air cell. So if we did have a chick in this egg, that air cell holds oxygen and it makes sure that that chick gets enough oxygen. Okay, but we don't always notice it. It's kind of, I can poke it. I would encourage you to try this on your own so you can see this more than you can in the video. But it's kind of a soft pocket of air. Okay, so as we look at our diagram again here, you can see that air cell at the top, right inside the bigger part of our egg. Now, let's keep moving, and let's move to... We'll move to the biggest part you see. We'll move to that white. Now, the egg white is actually called an albumin. So that albumin, you've noticed this if you've ever cracked an egg. It is runny, but it doesn't just move all over. That yolk stays with it. And that's the purpose of that. Its purpose is to keep that yolk in place, or to keep that chick cushioned and in place if we had a chick in our egg. Okay, so that's the white that you're familiar with. Moving to the yellow yolk, that is full of protein. So that yolk is a food source for a chick. Try not to spill on my computer here. This is hard to show you. But that yolk is full of protein. It's full of good fats and carbohydrates and all the nutrition that a chick would need. Okay. For people, it's still full of all that good protein and all those good fats. And that's part of the reason eggs are such a nutritious food for people. Now, this is really hard to see on my egg, so I'm going to show you with my diagram. But in the middle of that yolk, if you look close, sometimes you see this, but not always.
Yep.
There's this little white spot, and that's called a germinal disc. That is full of DNA, which is kind of complicated to explain. But if you think of your own family, your hair color is probably close to your parents. Your eye color. a lot of times we have features that are similar to our parents, and that is from our DNA. That's what gets passed on from our parents. The same is true for our chickens. A hen passes her traits, her DNA, to her chick through that germinal disc. Okay? There's just a couple more parts here, and they can be tricky to see. There's not a great way to see them in my egg here, but if you have your own in your classroom or at your home that you can crack open and look at, these things are a little easier to see in person. So we've talked about the air cell, our shell, our yolk, our albumin. We've talked about the disc and the membrane. But the last thing is hard for me to pronounce. Mrs. Wagner, do you remember?
Chalazi.
Chalazi. Yeah. And it looks like a CH, like a ch sound, but it's chalazi.
Yep.
Now, those, you can see better in my diagram here, look like these cords or strands. And I can see them on my egg, but I really don't think you can see them in the video. I really don't think there's a good way without spilling egg all over my computer. But if you look in an egg, they kind of look like really light, almost translucent cords on one side of your yolk. And the purpose of those is to keep that yolk floating in the center of the white, to keep it in the albumin, because that albumin is protecting the chick. So if we had a chick, those would be really important to make sure that everything's staying in the correct spot. Okay? So there's more to our eggs than you might have thought when we started out. If you're doing an activity, some of you have a page that looks like this where you can label those different parts. Some of you might have a workbook. It's fine if you're not doing those things, but I would encourage you to check this out. Go crack an egg. Don't waste it. You can fry it up and eat it or scramble it when you're done. But check it out next time you're baking or cooking. Look at that egg and see if you can find all of those different parts. And I hope you remember when you go home to tell somebody how many eggs are in Iowa. 16 billion. We produce a lot of eggs that help not just the United States, but worldwide. We're producing for them. So our Iowa farmers are doing it again. We'll see you next time, guys.